Intuitively, what happens is, as children grow up, we start to educate them progressively from the waist up. And then we focus on their heads, and slightly to one side.
I think in the old days, you know, you were better off. Because nowadays they're all specialists. Everyone's becoming better and better, and less and less. And eventually someone's going to be superb at nothing.
A, B, A, B, C, A, B, A,
Our education system has mined our minds in the way that we've strip mined the earth for a particular commodity. And for the future, it won't serve us. We have to rethink the fundamental principles on which we're educating our children.
We're not here to tell everybody that they're wrong and we're right. We're not saying that we have all the answers, but we'd like to present a different way of looking at it.
Hello, listeners, and welcome to China, Jeducation, episode 31. My name is Mick Farley, and I am Group Director of Operations for Harrow International Education, based in Hong Kong.
So, headmaster for 20 years, a native of the UK, a fellow Brit like myself. Mick is a graduate of Nottingham University. He's a director, as he said, of Group Operations for Asia International School Limited, overseeing new school projects, current school operations, and group-wide strategic development. Previously headmaster at Harrow International School, Bangkok, Mick has extensive experience in Japan, Europe, and the Middle East. He's an expert in school design, curriculum solutions, and educational management. At Harrow Bangkok, Mick led the school to outstanding success with exceptional examination and university entrance results. What about that? Mick, thank you so much for coming on today. I'm super excited about this podcast.
My pleasure, and thanks for the introduction, Chris.
So let's go straight into our backgrounds. Whereabouts in the UK are you from, Mick?
I'm from the largest county in the UK, Yorkshire, in the north of England. Grew up in Yorkshire and in a beautiful country area just outside of Sheffield, close to Manchester, called the Peak District. I was educated there then, as you've already said, Nottingham University, before then going into sports instruction. Outdoor education is how I found my way into education originally, which was a great life for a young man, but I quickly realised that it lacked intellectual stimulation. So I went back and retrained as a teacher, chose to be a primary teacher, and following a strong social conscience, started my teaching career on what the Brits would call council estates, so a low socioeconomic area in West Yorkshire, just south of Leeds, where I taught as a primary teacher for some time before starting to specialise in curriculum development.
And I think when we first met face to face, you mentioned you were a year 3 primary teacher. Am I right, Mick?
Taught in primary for several years, Chris. Grade 3, grade 4, grade 6. My favourite grade is actually grade 3. I just find those students, it's a very personal thing, to be very, very rewarding to work with. A lovely combination of mature, willing, independent, with innocence, and it's an age group where children show incredible progress. So for me personally, teaching children around age 8, age 9 is a wonderful experience.
I totally and utterly agree, and I'm a current grade 3 teacher too. It is just a wonderful time in human beings' life, especially to interact with them on a teaching basis, and just that innocence, magic I call it. They've got that magic stardust still around them, and obviously as teachers we try to keep it for as long as possible. So yeah, what really brilliant stuff. And I think the question is, Mick, how did you actually go international? You know, a lot of teachers have experienced they stay in England, obviously lots of stuff to do there, but what brought you out to, I think it was Japan first, am I right? Or maybe not?
No, initially it was out to the Middle East. It's a good question. Right. I think as a Brit, I've always had itchy toes, so ventured into Europe as a young man, and in my early teaching career, teaching sport, particularly in France. So always enjoyed travel. Went back, as I've already said, to retrain as a teacher with half a mind on the opportunities that would give me to work internationally. Now, I'm older than you, and we're talking about the mid-90s. I left my home country a long, long time ago. And actually, in that era, the international schools sector, whether British or IB or American, was relatively embryonic. There's been such an explosion in the pure volume of the international sector in recent years, but that wasn't the case 20 years ago. My career was doing relatively well in the UK. I was working as a teacher trainer and a curriculum developer by that time, no longer class-based. And frankly speaking, a lot of my colleagues thought I was mad to go international. There was no international as far as they were concerned. But no, I did. I took my wife, who's a very capable primary and early years teacher, and our then only daughter, with another one who's arrived since, to the Middle East to work for a good school, initially focusing still on curriculum development. So I was the curriculum leader for that school in Doha, in Qatar. And the mid-90s was an exciting time in that region because of oil prices. And the school was approached by one of the local oil companies. In fact, it was kind of the family business of the Al Thani family of who have the Emirates, are the emirs of Qatar, to found for them a school serving their new liquid natural gas community in the north of the peninsula of Qatar, in Al Khor. I was the first employee of that school, and it's remarkable. If you look up the Al Khor International School now, the last time I looked, it had over 3,000 students, which is both phenomenal and slightly worrying. For me, 3,000 students is much too big for a school, but you know, such were things in the Middle East in those days, that the school grew like topsy, established a good reputation, and became actually a company school. So at that time, I handed the school over to the company, and then moved to Tokyo, where I worked for the British school in Tokyo as headmaster, based right in the heart of the city in Shibuya.
I have to say, just listening, Mick, we could just do a whole podcast on those particular adventures, because I have so many sparked questions just coming off on my crib sheet here. But we must remain focused, as I always say on this podcast. And yeah, so it took you to Japan. Yeah, I know Japan very well. My wife's from there, where I met my wife, and I taught there for some time. And then after Japan, you then went on to Bangkok.
Not true, Chris. No. So six years in Tokyo. Founded this senior school there, which is out in Sangenjaya on the Showa Women's University. So the school grew to be a through school provision. Then actually, for more personal reasons, let's say, wanted to be closer to family, as did my wife. So I went to work for the ex-British Council School on the beautiful Mediterranean island of Cyprus. I'm a lifelong, though aging athlete, and I wanted to ride and race bicycles. So I lived the dream whilst having a very interesting job, running two schools, the junior and senior school as their principal, as the senior school was being established in Nicosia, the last partition, the last divided city of Europe, with the Turkish occupation in the north. I was working in the Greek Cypriot south. So 3 years there, and then joined Harrow in 2012, just as the school was recovering from the Bangkok floods at the end of 2011. Harrow Bangkok is the original Harrow School. In fact, it's more than that. It's the original branded British independent school outside of UK.
Indeed, yeah.
And the school was the only major school in Bangkok that at the end of 2011 had been flooded. So the school was just needing to re-establish itself a little bit after a slightly bumpy road, and that's me at my best. I love a challenge. I wouldn't be good at running a smooth, finely tuned machine of a school. I'm much better in situations where I can bring about change and improvement. That's what's tended to become my specialism. And the school was very good, built on strong foundations, educationally as well as literally, but had a difficult little spell there. So from 2012 to 14, we did a lot of consolidation work whilst we developed the strategy that then took the school through to a very major upgrade, both on the educational provision we were offering and also a huge facilities refurbishment of every corner of the campus, from early years to sixth form, improving existing facilities, building lots of new facilities, building new boarding facilities, sports facilities. It was a lot of fun. 11 new or wholly refurbished buildings in a build period of about 4.5 years. And we expanded the school, but also, most importantly, really lifted the standards of the education provided, both in terms of academic results, A-level results, GCSE results, and getting the kids to the universities of their choice, including some of the best universities around the world, not just UK. Harrow schools are successful in placing its graduates in American universities, Asian, Chinese universities. So we did well there. But we worked very hard, I suppose aligned to Harrow International's motto of leadership for a better world, developing leaders for a better world. We worked very hard on the provision of our holistic education, so really developing the whole young person. A lot of academic stretch opportunities, big creative arts programs, a music academy, sports academies in golf, in swimming, gymnastics, what else, tennis and football, and a lot of work in the area of service and making sure that our students learnt through serving their community, culminating actually in a global award for our leadership and service curriculum. So it was a very concerted team effort, Chris, let's put it that way, and a good period for Harrow Bangkok, I'd like to think, and a good period for me professionally as well, and hard to cap. So after 7 years with that school, and still in my mid-50s, it was time for a change. 20 years into headship, what does an aging head do? Other than take another headship, I was looking for something else and was offered the opportunity to join the group. And as you described at the beginning of this podcast, developing new schools as well as overlooking the existing schools. So that's what I find myself doing now, based in an office on the 35th floor, rather than being in a school and being around children. That I won't pretend I do miss a wee bit the children and the daily interaction with them. Fascinating job I'm in now.
Yeah, and so much detail in there, mate. You're almost answering the questions I was going to ask you. So there you go. That's a you clearly. No, absolutely not. It makes my job a lot easier. But really, to the listeners, the Bangkok thing, we know that our research myself, we've done listened to a lot of your videos and checked out the website there, and it is incredible score. It's 29 years, I believe now, maybe around that, Mick, that Harrow Bangkok's been there. So, it's no mug. That's a long time in the international game. And I think what I'd like to do now is backtrack a little bit. And for those that don't really know much about Harrow, I want to go back from Bangkok, which was its first international school, to the actual original Harrow school. Could you just give us a brief overview of that, its age and where it's come from, and very much the ethos that it's built upon, that you have alluded to, Mick?
Thank you. Harrow is an extraordinary institution. So Harrow School is in northwest London, about 10 kilometres from the centre of the city, overlooking actually from its hilltop position Wembley Football Stadium, coincidentally. Harrow School was founded by a wealthy local landowner some 450 years ago, John Lyon, Sir John Lyon, was able to gain a charter to found the school from the first Queen Elizabeth, and had envisaged providing education as a service to the workers of his estate. This being the era that was envisaged as being education for the boys of his farm workers and estate labourers, and I'm sure management as well. Interestingly, though, over the centuries and decades and centuries, the school morphed from John Lyon's original concept to something really quite different. Central London in those centuries subsequent was not a healthy and hygienic environment, suffering from epidemics of typhus and cholera and all sorts of killer diseases. So in fact, over the decades, the wealthy, the leaders of the city discovered that Harrow on the Hill was a much cleaner and safer environment for their boys to be educated in, and started carting their boys out for an education in the clean air of the countryside in Harrow School. And at some point, an entrepreneurial headmaster decided that he'd open a boarding house and charge fees. And lo and behold, found he was earning a lot more money from the fees from boarding than he was from his day job. And some of the other masters copied him, and lo and behold, the school became a boarding school for the well-placed of central London, and it continued to develop from there, adjusting and providing a higher and higher quality education appropriate to its era, of course, to the point where over the more recent centuries, Harrow School really has produced graduates who've gone on to change the world. It's as simple as that, and influenced the world that we still live in. So numerous Nobel Prize winners, 7 prime ministers of Britain, including Sir Winston Churchill, voted by the British the greatest Britain. And the list is almost endless. King Hussein of Jordan, Nehru, the first and longest serving prime minister of India, of independent India, physicists, chemists, artists. Benedict Cumberbatch, the current movie star, is old Harrovian. It's been an incredible story. Now, in and amongst, Chris, I think you find this interesting. I want, if I may, to make the link then to the international schools.
Sure.
So there was an era just before the First World War when, for some reason, a lot of the Thai royal family were being educated at Harrow School. So Thailand, many listeners will know, has a very well-placed, very, very wealthy royal family. And some 23 Thai princes or significant Thai individuals were educated at Harrow School up to the outbreak of the First World War, including Rama IX, the recently deceased's father, was educated at Harrow School. And if you're educated at Harrow, you want your son to be educated at Harrow, and your grandson as well. And of course, in actuality, Harrow School has limited capacity. It's not an enormous school. So a conversation must have started at some point, mid-20th century, let's say, whereby there was consideration as to whether there could be a Harrow School in Asia to address this obvious demand. And that's what led to these are big institutions, very, very cautious and conservative. So the conversation obviously carried on for some time before finally in the 80s some serious conversations, and in the 90s the signing of an agreement that led to the foundation of Harrow Bangkok in 1997, and that's the Bangkok link.
Okay.
So it's been quite an adventure for Harrow School. In 2 years' time, they'll celebrate their 450th year. It's an extraordinary institution with a very hallowed reputation and past.
Yeah, really incredible. So let's move then from England and from Bangkok in Thailand and start to talk about the shores of China, mainland China. I'm looking now at the Chinese name, the hands that you have under your emblem, and it's Harrow Li De Shui Shao. So Harrow, and then of course we've got Shui Shao, which is school, and in the middle we've got these two characters Li and De. Li De. That seems to be kind of manners and morality. Mick, can you just go into that a little bit, because this is really this is what it's all about, isn't it? When you boil it all down, this is the core element of what Harrow and its students and its teachers and all the people that are involved in the Harrow family all boil down to. And would I be correct?
You would, and that's very nicely put, Chris. Yes, leader. We thought very, very carefully about how we would move a Harrow education to a Harrow International Education to a Harrow bilingual education. And certainly those virtues of respect, manners, and virtue are very, very central, if you like, represent the DNA of a Harrow education. More importantly, matching very strongly virtues and attributes that are cherished, let's say, within Chinese culture and Chinese heritage, and what a culture and what a heritage. The extraordinary opportunity to bring 450 years of Harrow history and tradition to a culture that has 4,500 years of its own culture. It was something we wanted to take very seriously. As I say, the motto of our schools in Asia has been leadership for a better world. And that's not leadership in any elite sense. We recognise that the education provided by our bilingual schools, or as we call them, our Harrow Innovation Leadership Academies, will be provided to children who, frankly, are fortunate to have the opportunity to attend those schools. And fortunate kids are likely in their adult life to find themselves in positions of responsibility, significant responsibility, positions where they are, whether they like it or not, needing to take a lead. So we consider very carefully how we can develop these characteristics of respect, virtue, very much aligned to traditional Harrow values, and how we can provide an education that not only makes sure that the academic standards are extremely strong and that the kids are getting the grades and the exam results that they need for their future, but also to develop young people who are well equipped to lead in their community, to lead in society, given the challenges that we're going to face in the foreseeable future, with not only the extraordinary opportunities that digital technologies are bringing to the workplace and to the global community, but also the challenges that this rapid change that China and the globe is experiencing brings. And there's so many other challenges as well that the adults in leadership positions in the future are going to have to address, whether environmental issues, whether political issues. There are so many. So the Harrow educational program is not just an academic program. It's a program that makes sure that our young people develop leadership attributes so that they can be well equipped for the situations they're going to find themselves needing to be effective in their adult life, younger and older.
And Mick, really very clever that Harrow Li De Shui Shao, you know, Li and De, it obviously sounds very much like leader, doesn't it? So very, very nice. I see a lot of thoughts gone into that.
Well
okay.
Obviously not a coincidence, but I'm glad you
absolutely
noted.
Not. Right, brilliant. Let's now hammer down into what's going on in China. And first of all, just for the listeners, because it is a bit complicated in a way, and I'm sure you can explain it very simply. You work for a company called Asia International School Limited. Now, on the books that I've read, it says that That is the proud holding company of Harrow International Schools, Harrow Innovation Leadership Academies, and Harrow Little Lions Childhood Development. Could you just explain that? Because maybe some people would think, well, why don't you work for Harrow? Well, you do, but this is a Asia International School Limited is there, and there for very important reasons.
I'm very happy to explain that. I do work for Harrow in their international schools division, and Asia International School Limited was the original company set up, singular, Asia International School, set up to establish the Harrow International School. So we're very proud of our heritage. And Harrow International School proved to be sufficiently successful that we've subsequently opened 3 more schools. In Beijing in 2006, in Hong Kong in 2012. More recently, in 2016, we opened a school in Shanghai, but also experienced sufficient demand and expressions of interest from the People's Republic of China that we put our, as we'd say, thinking hats on, and as I've already touched on, started to consider whether the provision of a Harrow education that's offered in a bilingual delivery, providing Chinese children the best possible opportunity to have very, very strong cultural attachment to their home culture and their home language, Mandarin and China, but also to have strong skills to a level of being bilingual in a second global language, English, providing then a real opportunity to make choice at the time of university entrance in considering whether their future would be in a Mandarin university environment or an English-speaking university environment. So that was very much what was driving us towards the establishment of a second brand, the Harrow Innovation Leadership Academies, the bilingual schools. In and amongst, we've become very, very good for a school that was founded as a secondary boarding school in London at running what the British would call early years units. So our early years centres are cutely named Harrow Little Lions, the lion not only being important in China, but also the on the crest of Harrow School for many, many centuries, was something we also wanted to take the opportunity to develop. So we've actually taken the step now of opening standalone Harrow Little Lions centres, as well as branding all the Little Lions early years centres, so kindergartens in our bilingual schools and in our international schools as Harrow Little Lions. Eventually, we'd like to think that there would be several Little Lions centres in every tier 1 city in China. But as we've always done, we're growing cautiously. We're making sure that the, if you like, the concept is proven before overextending. So that's the stage we're at the moment, preparing to open both bilingual schools, our Harrow Innovation Leadership Academies, and our Harrow Little Lions standalone centres in various locations in China, commencing the coming summer 2020.
Yeah, it's really exciting stuff when you see what you are going to be opening over the next few years, which we'll go into in a short while, Mick. So just for the listeners, the Harrow School in Beijing, the Harrow School in Shanghai, the Harrow School in Hong Kong, obviously the one in Bangkok, but let's focus on the ones in China. The students that attend, it's a Harrow International School. They are what we call foreign passport holders. Am I correct? And Chinese passport holders can't go to those schools.
Yeah, that is correct. They are providing an international education, non-compliant with the Chinese national curriculum. Very much drawing on the heritage of a Harrow education, so driven by the requirements and approaches of British education. So this is a big step to us as we take what's best of a Harrow education, but also consider how we can really successfully, to a very high standard, deliver the Chinese national curriculum from grade 1 to 9, whilst also giving students access to English, and opening the door to a future which might be a Chinese future, or a future in the English-speaking world, or best case, providing children as graduates of our schools, our bilingual schools, with the opportunity of really having the choice to step in and out of either world, Chinese and English speaking.
Okay. And in terms of the business operation, how the company vehicle, so to speak, I'm just trying to get around this. So the schools that are the Harrow schools, which are for foreign passport holders, opposed to the leadership academies, which we're going to go into more, which obviously you follow the Chinese curriculum from grade 1 to 9, and a Chinese passport holder can attend. Are they set up in the same way, or I guess what I'm saying is are these leadership academies, are they franchised? What's the kind of vehicle that operates in? Is it franchised? Is there a stakeholder that is Chinese, a Chinese group, perhaps government in that? Could you just elaborate on how it actually works mechanistically, if I can use that word?
Yes, and come back if you need more clarification. A simple explanation would be that the bilingual schools offering the Chinese national curriculum from grade 1 to 9, though a large proportion of that curriculum taught in English, are licensed Harrow schools. Each school would have its own license. Each school would run not-for-profit, of course, and each school would be very carefully quality assured to Harrow standards, governed through the Harrow license, with key components like recruitment of senior managers, recruitment of teachers, quality of delivery of curriculum, being quality assured, both internally, part of my role here in headquarters, and externally through quality audit from Harrow School. We have a very close working relationship, but are very strongly accountable in order to be able to use that Harrow name. All the schools are also externally validated and accredited through a small number of external accreditation or inspection agencies. Does that answer your question, Chris, in terms of how bilingual schools will be licensed?
Yes, very, very much so. And Mick, could we finish this this section that we've been talking about here? We've just given our listeners the summary of this massive rollout that you guys, in AISL and Harrow are doing now over China. Because, I've seen the map, and what is dotting on the map Harrow-wise, whether it be a school or an actual innovation leadership academy, as we've talked about, where are you expanding to over the next few years? Because it is a big project you've got on.
It is. It's exciting. We've been, if you like, tooling up, expanding the capacity here in headquarters, and thinking very carefully about curriculum development, senior staff recruitment, etc. here at headquarters in preparation for the rollout. So, in a nutshell, as we would say, to put it succinctly, in the summer of 2020, Asia International School Limited, so Harrow International, will open 5 new schools. We'll open a kindergarten. I'll start with that one. Very fond of early years education, so it's a good place to start. In Nanning, many of your listeners will know that lovely city down in southern China. That kindergarten subsequently in 2021 will become a K-12 bilingual Harrow Innovation Leadership Academy. In your hometown, Chris, we will open a full Harrow International Harrow Innovation Leadership Academy in Hengqin, in Zhuhai, and round the bay in Shenzhen, we will open a Harrow International School just across the border from Hong Kong, about 20 minutes drive from our Harrow International School in Hong Kong. Going down to beautiful Hainan Island and its capital, Haikou, will open a very interesting school complex. So a single campus will accommodate both the Harrow Innovation Leadership Academy and the Harrow International School. Beautiful greenfield site, 300 meters from the beach, very well located just outside Haikou in an area that's being developed for the international as well as Chinese business community. Lovely environment. So very large campus, wonderful facilities shared by both the bilingual school and the Harrow International School. Both schools with boarding. So we envisage boarders coming down from cold in the winter North China and really enjoying the opportunities that Hainan Island offer for world-class education, both in the academic sense and also in terms of holistic education. And then finally, over in Chongqing, magnificent city. Outside of the city, in a greenfield site, we're building Harrow Innovation Leadership Academy with boarding, a huge site. It will eventually be physically the largest site that we operate, on a bend in the river, beautiful green environment, looking at the mountains. Again, a lot of boarding provision there. We imagine children, older children, obviously, age appropriately, probably boarding through the week, returning home, whether to Chongqing, Chengdu, or elsewhere in southern China, and then coming back on Monday for more of the same. So 5 really exciting, really different projects that launch this next phase of our development. Significant projects, but in and amongst, we'll also continue to open our Harrow Little Lions as opportunities arise. So these are kindergartens that don't need to be opened in an August-September window of opportunity. We have opportunities here in Hong Kong, in Guangzhou. We have an opportunity just down the road from where you're talking to me in Zhuhai. So as the opportunities come along, we imagine opening a trickle of Harrow Little Lions month by month, year by year, with a strong team here in headquarters established to be able to do that. And it goes on, Chris. So in 2021, we hope a second school in Zhuhai, in Tangzhouan, and that will be a second Harrow Innovation Leadership Academy. We will open a Harrow Innovation Leadership Academy on the site of the recently opened Harrow International School in Shenzhen, in Shanghai, for those of you who know that part of Shenzhen. Fantastic opportunity, great location. In 2022, we open more schools internationally, if you like. So we'll open a fantastic state-of-the-art school in North Japan.
Really? Wow.
The northern tip of Honshu in Iwate Prefecture, in a ski resort. We'll have literally ski-in, ski-out opportunities in the winter, immediately adjacent to a world-class golf course in the summer, with tennis centre, in a beautiful alpine, pristine environment. And that will be 100% boarding. It will be a super campus, opening, as I say, summer 2022, and eventually having feeder schools both in Tokyo and down in Kansai, adjacent to Osaka, all to be announced yet, that will be primary schools, lower schools, feeding the super campus up in Appy. Appy Kogan is the ski resort. It's an extraordinary project that I'm working hard on to finalise. We'll also be opening a school in Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam, which will be an international school. And you get the idea. I could carry on 7 times.
I was going to say, mate, are you coming to the end of the list yet? It's unbelievable.
Approach.
It really is.
It's a very exciting time. It's ambitious, but it's doable. We've been very, very careful to build on our knowledge to date. Our growth has been cautious. We've experienced strong success with our international schools. And as I say, we've spent the last couple of years really improving the support we can offer from headquarters for these newly established schools. Several of the founding headmasters / mistresses are actually, or senior managers will be drawn from our existing Harrow International schools, both Chinese staff as well as international staff. So we're able to really build on what we know about running high quality education in Asia, not just in terms of the curriculum, but the good people that we need as well, with a lot of support from headquarters. So yeah, fast growth, but done cautiously, responsibly, and we're very excited with the prospects to come.
I mean, just listening to you makes me even excited too. Got things going down my spine. And the listeners, I'm sure, would not need me to tell them that Harrow clearly sees a huge market potential in Asia, Mick, and is definitely in it for the long term. So wonderful stuff. I really now want to focus down on these Harrow leadership academies, and the two that are opening up in Zhuhai, in the Hunchin area of Zhuhai, and also in the north in the Tanjiawan area the following school year in 2021, both with boarding school capacity and you know, up to, I think you're imagine maybe around over 1,000 students for each campus. So it's two big projects. What I wanted to ask was, are you focusing, when you open one of these academies, do you focus on all of the age groups, or how will it be in Zhuhai? Will you be focusing on the early years, you know, primary first, and then moving up into the secondary?
It's a really important question. Our strategy has been carefully thought through, but also slightly dictated by events, if I'm entirely open, Chris. Originally, our strategy was to open the Tanjiawan site and the Hongqing site at the same time in 2020. For a variety of reasons, that hasn't been possible, and what we will never do as a Harrow school is make promises we can't keep. So we've had to adjust our strategy and have launched the Hongqing campus to open, as you know, in the summer of 2020. Now, originally Hongqing was designed, or envisaged, I should say, as an upper school, so a junior high and a high school. And originally the Tanjiawan site would have been launched as a kindergarten and elementary school. Due to the delay of the Tanjiawan project, what we will do is open the Hongqing school as not a kindergarten, but as an elementary and junior high school, which will then obviously year on year grow through into high school provision. What we then hope to be able to do, and we haven't yet formally announced this, is open the Tanjiawan site in the summer of 2021 as a primary school, if we have sufficient demand, even with lower secondary, so with junior high school, but certainly as a primary school. And it could be that some of the Hongqing students who are primary age, in the second year with their HILA Zhuhai, actually choose to move from the Hongqing site to the Tanjiawan site. We'll talk to the families closer to the time, we'll consider with them what's best for them, and they'll have the option of staying in the Hongqing site or moving to the Tanjiawan site. Some of that will be dictated by educational need. For lots of families, it will be much more about getting to school and what's best for them. So if that explains, and I hope not in too much detail, the strategy we've been using, Hongqing opens first, and then in 2021, Tanjiawan as a primary school. Now, in and amongst what we're also seeking to do is to open, as I mentioned before, a Harrow Little Lions in Zhuhai. Not quite ready to announce that formally yet, but hopefully that will give an additional option for families who have kindergarten age children, or families who have older children and kindergarten age children. So it's a package that's enticing in terms of the options it will offer families, but it needs to be clearly communicated, and we'll do that through our WeChat sites and make it very clear what the options are.
It's funny because, you know, being on the ground in Zhuhai, where I've lived for several years now, we get the rumours through that, you know, this school, Wickham Abbey's coming, or Harrow's going to be coming, and so many rumours about the school up in Tanger and the school down in Hunchin, and what it was going to be, you know, what age group. So that's really cleared things up. And I think for the listeners, especially local listeners, that would do an absolutely perfect job for that. So thank you, Mick. Right, I want to get down to the nitty gritty, as we say on this podcast. When we met recently, you said the word 70-30. And I think this is very important, this 70-30. Could you explain what you mean by that? I mean, I think I have an understanding of it, but better coming from yourself.
My pleasure, Chris. Yeah, the magic 70-30. So,
yes.
Of course, in the key years, in the core years of the Chinese national curriculum from grade 1 to grade 9, our commitment will be to teach a really high quality curriculum, which is the Chinese national curriculum. We'll do it well. We're busy designing how that will be, how those years and those programs of study will be taught. But crucially, how can we do that and still claim to give our students the opportunity to develop English and become bilingual? And the answer is that key components need to be taught in Chinese language, Mandarin, of course, but also the rich culture, traditions, history, geography, morality, ethics of China will be covered in Chinese, and that's right, and that will be very strong coverage with high quality teachers, very well trained and supported. We think that will account for about 30% ballpark generalizing of curriculum timetable to time.
All right.
The other 70% will of curriculum time and the wider extracurricular opportunities that students have during their school day. And these are long days with Harrow. They're productive, they're great fun, but they're long days. The other 70% will be conducted in English. So that's a very large proportion of the Chinese national curriculum, subjects like mathematics, biology, physics. Chinese national curriculum programs will be taught, but they'll be taught in English.
Wow.
And those are programs that we're developing at the moment, and they're exciting and entirely doable as we study, as I become more aware of, more versed in the Chinese national curriculum. I'm excited by our opportunity to teach a really high quality Chinese national curriculum, a portion of it in Chinese and a portion of it in English. We're going to be recruiting teachers who are also excited by that prospect. And it's entirely doable as we develop our programs. The Chinese national curriculum is carefully thought through, is a curriculum that's been developed over many, many years and decades. And at the end of the day, Chris, it's a very international curriculum in many respects. Let me just give an example. Photosynthesis, so how a green plant photosynthesizes. It doesn't matter whether that's taught in English or Chinese. Photosynthesis is photosynthesis, and the principles are the principles, generally internationally accepted. So there's an opportunity for us to teach a scientific process and scientific concepts in English, allowing the lesson, the scheme of work on photosynthesis to be a vehicle for children, not just to learn about biology, but to learn English, taught appropriately with the necessary support for Chinese first language speakers to develop an understanding of the concepts of photosynthesis, possibly initially in Chinese, before key vocabulary is introduced in English. And those are systems and methods that you would be very familiar with as an experienced teacher yourself. But of course, there's more. This is a Harrow education. We're very committed to developing the whole child with broad opportunities for exploring other interests, musical and creative, or academic, or sporting, and those opportunities will again be offered in English, appropriately supported. So, as I say, generalizing across the whole day, week, term, semester, year, we approximate that a student of the HILA Hengqin and in the future Tanzhuan will experience the 30-70 split. 30% of the overall educational experience of each student will be in Chinese, and the Chinese programs will be very high quality. But 70% can be delivered in English, allowing that young person to really develop competence, fluency, confidence in English, preparing them for that situation I described before, whereby they'll be able to make a choice about their university destination and their future adult life, whether that will be in a Chinese-speaking, English-speaking, or bilingual environment.
Very, very clear, Mick. Very clear. One thing I will pick up on is you said the Harrow days are very long. Now, my day starts at about 6:30 with the kids and ends at probably about 11 when I can't open my eyes anymore. How long is a Harrow day going to be in HLIA Jeducation Hengqin?
Well, I mean, it very much depends whether we're talking about day students or boarders. We strongly advocate day students. We strongly, I was going to say, Chris, advocate boarding because it really gives 24/7 engagement. But for a day student, we're realistic. We're educators. We're great believers in that expression, less is more. So we're not cramming children with facts for 14 hours of their day. A typical school day, the timetable might run for something in the order of 6 to 7 hours of timetabled lessons, with breaks, with lunchtime, and afternoon programs available. But those breaks, those lunchtimes, before classes, after classes, are packed full of opportunities for children to do other valuable stuff, you know, whether practicing their violin or going to debate club or preparing for a model United Nations competition, house events where they're taking the lead in organising, sitting on the committee of a charity raiser or a fundraiser, I should say, or some sort of event that's important to the community. So much going on the campus of a Harrow school, whether an HILA or an HIS. And really, we get to the point where the students love their school. They're doing lots and lots of things, but they're things they want to be doing. And our day students on a campus that has boarding students as well are quite often having to be encouraged to go home. They don't want to go home. So they're long and busy days, but they're purposeful.
Mick, we're obviously in the bilingual realm now of talk. Will the Chinese student who joins the HLIA, will they have to take a kind of an English language test? You know, is it a must that they have a suitable level of English, or will there be a kind of an internal intensive English service for those low-level English-speaking students?
Combination of both, Chris. So we, of course, are not going to admit any children who will go on to experience failure. That would be very damaging for the child, for the family, for us, for everyone involved. We're currently embarked on a series of educational consultations that will allow us to talk to each child and each family about the level of their child's English and other things, of course, importantly, their academic capability, etc. And that educational consultancy will allow the family to form an opinion as to whether their child could be successful with us in our HILA Jeducation. The level of English required is specifically the question you're asking, and that's going to vary quite significantly, particularly given the age of the child. So younger children, really we're looking for potential, not a lot of English being spoken. We know that young children neuropsychologists firmly advise us that their brains have extraordinary plasticity, and they're at a point where psychologically as well as emotionally, they just want to communicate. They're willing to use Swahili if it's what will give them the Lego box. So, younger children, really, we're looking for intellectual ability. We're looking for children who are socially able to get on. And we're looking for families where the child will have support from home. As the child ages, or the consideration of the age group ages, of course, then we're looking for children who have a little bit more English. But we're opening the school in age groups that will allow us to admit children whose English will then develop very quickly in experience year on year. And we're not going to be launching IGCSEs, A-levels, so externally validated examinations that require a high level of English proficiency. We'll be very careful about the year groups that we open, allowing our children, once admitted, to not only make the adjustment to a very different learning environment and means of teaching and learning, but also operating 70% in English. Will allow for time for the children to adjust before pitching them into external examinations.
Okay. I mean, you mentioned earlier, Mick, that these Harrow Innovation Leadership Academies that will be starting the rollout from next school year, it's a first experiment of a kind for Harrow, in a way. And I mean, many schools in China, from my experience and speaking to many educators here, have seen these stories of these companies or schools trying this bilingual, parallel immerse, shall we say, two-country curriculum sandwich, and seemingly failing very badly. The idea of trying to put 2 cups of water into only 1 cup seems to suggest an unfortunate outcome of spillage and slippiness. So, I mean, how Harrow, and I think really you so eloquently through this podcast so far, Mick, answered this question, but how are Harrow going to create this magic, to do this differently than others before it? And, most importantly, how and why is it going to succeed, do you think?
It's a really important question. We're going to do this cautiously, prudently, based on the foundations of a lot of success that we don't take for granted, that we've worked hard for in our Harrow School in London, subsequently in the Harrow International Schools. So we have learnt a lot operating, for example, a school in Bangkok with 80% of its children being first language speaking in a language other than English. And the programs, the pedagogies we've developed there have led to extraordinary success in producing young people who leave the school bilingual and go to and succeed in some of the best universities in the world. Our schools in China, particularly the Beijing school, operates curricula that assure the coverage of the Chinese national curriculum for many children who are Chinese, not just international children. So again, in recent years in Beijing, we've done a lot of learning about bilingual education and how children, or what children need in order to be successful in that environment. And then, crucially, not just building on that experience, but investing here in the centre, in headquarters, in really capable staff, not just international educators, but we have a team of Chinese educators who, from a Chinese perspective, understand what children need, coming from a Chinese linguistic and educational background in order to succeed, meaning that we've invested a lot of time in the development of a curriculum and a pedagogical approach that will support the needs of these children, to make sure, and I'm going to challenge that word, to make sure that this isn't seen as an experiment because no one wants their child experimented on, but to make sure that we can be very confident that the children will thrive. as a headmaster, as a teacher in bilingual environments in the past, I've seen it with my own eyes. I know many, not all, many of the mistakes that can be made. I also know many of the techniques that can lead to success. And fundamentally, it's about being very focused in a way that Harrow's traditionally been able to achieve, very focused on the needs of that individual child. Through our house system, we have a relationship between key pastoral staff. We use a system with house masters and house mistresses who year on year through the house have children with them growing from the elementary years through early adolescence and into the teenage years. And these pastoral staff know those children extremely well, not just in the lessons, but outside of the lessons, in structured as well as casual time. And it's those teachers working with the children and considering the individual needs that each child has in many areas, including the acquisition of a second language, English, that allows us to tailor the way teachers are working with those children, the techniques that are being used in the class, individualized support or small group support when needed, focus on vocabulary, focus on English language, focus on other academic skills on paper, for example, that allows bit by bit the child to move forward whilst experiencing success. And if children are successful, they come to want more and more, and that's what leads them to really embrace the school and the opportunity the school gives them. And that's what gets them to really strong exam results. And that's what gets them to an interview table with a top university. But then they've got to have a personality and a character and things to talk about and the ability to look the interviewer in the eye. And that's where the holistic approach to education becomes so important in these situations that are hugely competitive, as our graduates go shoulder to shoulder with graduates from all over the world competing for places at the top universities and universities of their choice. So slightly rambled explanation perhaps, Chris, but it's a big package. It's a very carefully considered approach to education, and we're confident we can be successful in our HILAs because frankly it's not entirely new to us. We're building, evolving on our successes to date.
Here, Mick, absolutely spot on. And as we move into the last part of this podcast, I just have a few questions that have been written in from our listeners I'd like to put to you, Mick. I wanted to just talk about recruitment, because clearly, having discussed Harrow's hugely ambitious, shall I say, international plans, it seems like you're going to have to recruit many more international teachers. So can you briefly explain the process? We don't need to go into the ins and outs, but more so the requirements that you're looking for any teacher that may be listening to this podcast, who may be interested in applying to work for Harrow. For example, Mick, do you have to be a teacher currently teaching in England to apply?
The answer to that is no. We're looking for teachers for our Harrow International Schools and, importantly, our HILAs, who are fully qualified, equivalent to, it's like the Holy Grail. The British Ministry of Education or Department for Education have a registration requirement, and we're looking for teachers who have the equivalence of that requirement. We're looking for teachers who are first language English speaking, and we're looking for teachers that come from a strong background. So we're not looking for fledgling teachers. They need to be well into their career, their teacher's toolbox well stocked with the tricks of the trade for classroom management, behaviour management, as well as subject knowledge. So that's kind of the basics, but they don't need to be working in Britain. They could be anywhere in the world, including in China. And in fact, many of our strong applicants are coming in from China.
Okay.
I think very importantly, we're looking for that extra bit of something. We want teachers with, I like to call it sparkle, something that makes them stand out, that's going to engage children. We're also looking for teachers who love working with children. Don't just see it as a day job, see it as a vocation.
Exactly.
It's something they really enjoy. And we're looking for teachers who embrace, I've used the phrase several times, a holistic approach to education. So not just focused on their subject in their classroom, but really understand the value of a wraparound education that's so engaging for the young people, and can bring other skills and experiences to a school community. So maths teachers who are musical, primary teachers who want to take secondary children up a mountain. You know, we're looking for teachers with that extra bit of something that's going to really allow these new schools to found and quickly become communities, not just buildings. We're fortunate in recruitment in that Harrow has such a strong name, not just in the UK, but internationally. It's recognised, if you like, as a kite mark of quality. And there's teachers, international teachers, looking around for opportunities. It can be bewildering. So the Harrow name brings that assurance, and we're lucky that means that we have a lot of teachers expressing interest in opportunities with us. But with this rapid period of expansion, at a time when many other international schools are setting up, we don't take that for granted. So we've a very, very strong programme of, we would call it continuous professional development. Our Harrow Academy, which will allow teachers, once they've joined us, the opportunities they need to develop as professionals. So we will retain them and see them grow and flourish and see a whole pathway ahead of them for their career within a Harrow school, whether in Shenzhen or Hainan Island or in Japan. We have strategic allegiances. That's not the word I was trying to find. Alliances was the word I was trying to find, with some of the leading educational institutions globally that will be offering and be validating courses that will provide for our teachers, allowing them to become middle managers, senior managers, future school leaders. We'll invest not only in our international educators, but also in our locally recruited educational staff, so teachers, but teaching assistants, very important in our schools. We'll have a pathway that they can see ahead of them, offering them a real future working within a Harrow school. So yeah, again, working hard not just on recruitment, but on how we're going to then retain and grow our talent.
Yeah, superb. I mean, Mick, it's recruitment time now, isn't it? And I believe my researchers are telling me that recruitment's still open at the moment for the Harrows around Asia. I've been told November the 24th seems to be a kind of a deadline date. I mean, this pod will go out before then. Would I be right in saying that? It's a few more weeks to go.
That's correct, Chris, and I thank you for that. Yeah, so look online. We have a well-developed recruitment portal that outlines all the opportunities within the Harrow family, and that is the deadline for round one. We're anticipating strong interest in our schools, and that interest, I'm really pleased to say, is growing all the time. So there will be a round two in January, and I think fairly undoubtedly there'll be a round three in March, April after Chinese New Year. But round one, the currently advertised posts, yeah, that's the deadline. Get busy. I would encourage any talented, sparkly teacher out there.
Yes, indeed. Right, Mick, before we finish, because this has been wonderful, but I've got to keep you on for a few listeners' questions. Do you mind?
Of course, please go ahead.
Brilliant. Okay, here we go then. The first one is, you alluded to this earlier. Why is there no Harrow in Malaysia, Singapore, or even Vietnam? Well, you told us about the Ho Chi Minh one that's on the horizon. Malaysia, Singapore, any plans for them, or is that kind of now probably saturated with tons of brilliant international schools already.
There you go. You see, very good at your job. You've kind of explained it. The Harrow Group hasn't been in a hurry to expand. Various opportunities came along in Malaysia, and none of them looked like the right opportunity. You know, we're very, very careful about the opportunities we accept in order to be able to provide, in order to have the necessary space, facilities, partner, opportunity to build a Harrow school. So no firm plans in Malaysia or Singapore. Never say never if the right opportunity came along, but we would be very discerning, very careful about what that opportunity looked like.
Okay, watch this space. Now, this next one, it links into the recruitment. Is it frowned upon, Nick, to apply to multiple different schools in multiple locations? This is, like, I guess, through Harrow's recruitment portal. Can you clarify this? Because I believe I read that a teacher can apply for 2 open positions, but is that just in one school, or meaning they can only apply for 1 position in 2 separate locations? So what I'm saying is, is that frowned upon in any way? If, you know, you see someone wants to come to Zhuhai or wants to apply for Bangkok, is that seen as a, you know, maybe, oh, you know, they're not really into one place?
That sounds like a listener speaking from the heart, from experience. Not at all is the answer. Not frowned on at all. The recruitment portal is my baby. We wrote it in a way that absolutely would allow a teacher to come in thinking, you know, I'm only interested in Shanghai, and then get into the portal and be astonished at the range of opportunities across the whole family. And we believe in sharing the love, spreading the love, by allowing teachers to apply for multiple posts, and we work with and brief our headmasters and headmistresses to work in close collaboration. The only rule we have, and the recruitment portal is very carefully structured so that people can and can't see the right things. The only rule we have is when we get to a point which is truly internally competitive, as in one school has made an offer, everyone else's interest in that teacher is frozen until that offer is dealt with by the candidate, either accepted or rejected. If it's accepted, obviously all of the bets are off. If it's rejected, then that candidate is back on with the other opportunities being pursued within the family. So no, apply away, listeners. There's some fantastic opportunities out there, and you won't be being seen as disloyal or irresponsible if you're expressing interest in several different opportunities.
Okay, thanks for that, Mick. This is a good question. I can resonate with this from my experience on the ground here in China. For the HILA, so this is the Innovation Leader Academies, which of course 2 are going to be opening in Zhuhai in the next few years. As you are following the Chinese curriculum and supposed local laws, will the school be able to access international websites such as YouTube for educational purposes? And will international festivals be able to be celebrated, such as Christmas and Halloween? And last bit, sorry, which school calendar will you follow? An international one, or will it be the Chinese one? Now, that's some great questions. I really.
Yeah, really detailed question. And these are deliberations we're having as we head into the final run into opening our newer schools. So of course, I will clearly state that we will be entirely compliant with the regulations of the local and regional EDBs. We of course want to make sure that our teachers and students have the right resources available to them, but those resources will be appropriate, and we will be operating entirely to the letter of the law. We have various ways and means of making sure that our teachers have the resources that they will need, whether it's video, whether it's online or not. Probably I won't go into any more details than that, but our teachers are not going to lack in the resources they need. As for the calendar, of course, the Chinese New Year will be sacrosanct, and we operate already 3 schools in China, including Hong Kong.
Yeah.
And are very used to that. And of course, we're considering whether it will be a tri-semester or a bi-semester school year. We very much want to synchronize our school year across the whole group for many different reasons, good and about children and their learning and the opportunities we can offer them. So, you know, for example, Chris, you'd be interested in this. Every year we run a Harrow family ski camp. Well, sorry, I should call it the winter camp, because it's not just skiing, it's snowboarding, there's community service and cultural activities up in northern Japan in the ski resort that we're going to open a school in. And we want all our kids to have the opportunity to attend it. There are student conferences in London and in schools around the region. There are competitions, whether face-to-face or online. There are many different reasons why it's in everyone's best interest to synchronise our calendars. So probably it will be a hybrid whereby we are acknowledging Chinese New Year, we are acknowledging Christmas, and by and large, we're running 3 semesters so that we fit with the other schools, both the bilingual schools and the Harrow International schools that are all a part of our family. So I'm not fully answering your question. I'm trying to give you a sense of the direction we're going. We will make sure that the family is connected, the Harrow International schools and the Innovation Leadership Academies, for all the right reasons, because it's about the children and the opportunities we can offer them across the family, as well as the teachers.
Yeah, makes perfect sense, Mick. Next one, a few more to go. What type of summative assessments will you be using in these Innovation Leadership Academies? In-house or outside? Outside adjudication, such as map testing? Yes. I think you alluded to earlier in the primary years there wasn't going to be any external exams. Was I right in listening?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably 3 different approaches we could be taking for summative assessment, or for readers who, for listeners who aren't teachers, for assessments that are summarising where a child is in their learning. So certainly we'll use internal frameworks that already exist and have been developed within the Harrow family.
Okay.
And they'll be standardised across the school and across the schools so that we know how children as well as teachers are performing. And of course, some of those will be bought in, will be off the shelf commercial products, if you like, whether it's reading age, whether it's a mathematical test. So internally developed or commercially bought. And then ultimately, we will get to those age groups where there are external examinations that provide a grade, that are externally validated, and those, you know, very typically in a Harrow Innovation Leadership Academy or HIS will be at age 16 a suite of GCSE or international GCSE qualifications, and then at age 18. We're not hard and fast by this, but we are A-level schools, advanced level, the UK pre-university qualification. As I say, sat at age 18. Typically, some students sit 1 or 2 A-levels a year, even rarely 2 years earlier. A-levels give access to global universities, not just British universities. Even Chinese universities, Japanese universities accept A-levels. But yeah, as you said, we'll work towards that. We need to make sure in new schools like our Jew High School that the students are ready. That could well be we open to grade 8, possibly even grade 9 if we judge the cohort strong enough, but they wouldn't sit their GCSEs until grade 10 and their A-levels until grade 12. So we'll be very careful about that.
Okay, wonderful stuff. Mick, I think this is a simple yes or no question. How good's that? Here we go. I am a Japanese female teacher with over 6 years of international teaching experience, have a degree and master's in young childhood education and accredited teaching license, all from the US. Many schools in China have refused my application because my passport is not from a native English-speaking country. Will this also be the case when applying for a teaching position with Harrow? And I'll say, I've heard these stories from lots of people, friends, and that Harrow being Harrow all over the world, so not just in China.
The simple answer is no. We would not reject that application based on passport. We are looking for native level English speakers to be teaching as qualified teachers in our schools. That said, it sounds like the listener who sent that question in has studied to a very high level within an English first language speaking environment. So we would be able to make an assessment, judging whether English proficiency for that prospective colleague was sufficient. And then, of course, making a match to the teaching requirements that could be the possible deployment. So it sounds like that's an early years practitioner, and I've certainly worked very successfully within Harrow schools and outside of Harrow schools with non-first language English speaking early years teachers who have extremely good English, to put me to shame, who can be very successful working with young people. So the answer is no, apply away, and we would then engage with you, and part of the process would be to judge whether your English proficiency was sufficient.
Okay, gotcha. Mick, here's one more. As an international Harrow teacher, will I have a local teaching assistant in my classroom? I think, yes, you alluded to that. I can answer that for you. If so, will they be the main contact? Oh, this is good. For communication with parents. And on top of that, he wants to know how many students will be in the class maximum.
Yeah, so obviously it depends on the age group we're talking about. It sounds like that teacher is focused on the elementary years, on the primary years, with a teaching assistant in the classroom. So
yeah, you're probably
the answer is yes.
Spot on. Yeah.
There would be a teaching assistant in the classroom. Yes, that teaching assistant, if the teacher was not a Chinese speaker, would be very important for communication with home, with parents. Though not only the teaching assistant, we are recruiting Chinese teachers to teach the Chinese portion of the curriculum, who will also be used as very important links with home. And of course, the school would have a Chinese principal, also very important for appropriately for home liaison if a matter was sufficiently serious. But day to day, how's my reading going? What's homework been like the night before? The teaching assistant becomes very important for that. In terms of class sizes, again, it depends on the age group. At primary years or during primary years, early years we start at 14 to 16. By the time we get to K2, that's gone 16 to 18. By the time we get to grade 1, that would be 20 to 22, going through to the lower secondary years, so junior high school. Grade 6 we'd be going to 22 to 24, absolutely capped at 24, and then numbers start to come down again as we go into the examined years. Grade 9 and then beyond grade 9, numbers come down and down again, obviously dependent on subject. It can be very healthy to have a big economics A-level class, but you want small chemistry groups.
Yeah. The Harrow China Jedi finish line is coming up in the distance, Mick. One more. As a teacher, will I have control over my classroom layout and be allowed to provide teaching strategies such as continual provision and perhaps have double block periods for literacy? What's the situation with classroom layout and those types of things?
Classroom layout, largely speaking, yes. Again, it sounds like we're talking about a primary teacher.
Right, yes, I'd say, yeah.
So, we very much believe in empowering teachers of that age group to own the environment. It's such a creative process. I was that teacher, so were you, Chris. So the environment needs to work for the teacher, and what works for one doesn't necessarily work for another. We're not in favour of lots of desks in rows because that doesn't support the pedagogical approach. Would be an example of some broad guidelines that would be insisted on. We do encourage individual work, small group work as well as whole class work. and so the classroom layout has to support those varied approaches. But in and amongst, there's lots of opportunity for individualism. In terms of assuring double lessons for literacy, for example, certainly English, Mandarin, mathematics, and coding and technology are given primacy as we build the timetable. So big chunks of discrete time for those subjects. I wouldn't want to say that, in fact, I would argue it's not even necessarily the best thing to give a double English lesson first thing in the morning every morning. And of course, we've got the realities of a timetable and finite staff, etc. But yes, I mean, we certainly build timetables that allow for the core high priority subjects to be delivered in the mornings when children are awake and brains are well oxygenated, is an approach that we try to take.
Mick, something that's just come into my head that's not here on the paper. Types of technology in the classroom. Is it going to be, all the children have, these tablets now, or, computers in the classroom? How's that going to work in a Harrow HLIA sense?
That is one area we're not quite done on at the moment. We're developing a technology strategy almost as we speak. We had colleagues down in a conference in Singapore last weekend and feeding back. So we're not quite settled. I can give assurance that technology will have an appropriate level of profile in our classrooms, appropriate being not wholly dependent on. We very much believe in children stepping away from screens and finding the right balance. There are a number of approaches used in our Harrow International schools to date, with lots of screens, lots of use of tablets, bring your own device systems, policies for some of the older year groups. And we're moving away from now interactive whiteboards towards screen sharing and lots of opportunities to project screens to groups of children or whole classes. But we are actually going through a period of rethink. The important thing at the moment, of course, is that we are providing infrastructure that will be appropriate to what we want to offer our teachers and children. So, very, very high speed and lots of accessibility is going in as we speak into our new school builds. But the technology in the classroom, not quite sure yet. Okay, great. Last one for the listeners. Is Harrow's Leadership Academies fully focused on local Chinese children and parents, or is it also accepting and hoping to attract expat families and children and foreign passport holders? If so, is there perhaps also potential for scholarship schemes in that respect? Good question. So very much the latter. We're excited by the quality and prospect within our Harrow Innovation Leadership Academies. This isn't tokenism at all to the Chinese national curriculum. This will be a very carefully thought through curriculum delivery, a huge amount of broader opportunity for children to really explore what interests them in their education. So we do imagine that there's going to be families who are not Chinese who want this unique education for their child. And in fact, in the coming years, we're going to be launching 2 schools where families absolutely will have choice. So both in Shenzhen and in Haikou will have on the same campus a Harrow International School and a Harrow Innovation Leadership Academy. And we believe that families will exercise choice. And frankly, the opportunity to, as an international expatriate, whether Korean, Japanese, Western European, North American, and have that opportunity for your child to become completely fluent in Mandarin whilst receiving a Harrow education could be very enticing up against the Harrow International School offering. So yeah, we will accept non-Chinese passport holders into our HILAs, and we think there are going to be some. Second question, scholarships, absolutely, not just to non-Chinese, but to Chinese as well. This is something that Harrow just does. We believe in scholarships. We believe bringing children in from a range of backgrounds is healthy for the whole community, as well as serving that child. So there will be scholarship opportunities, and there are in all Harrow International schools and in the original school, which was founded by a philanthropist and has always had scholarships. Interesting little aside, Chris, the reason for the Harrow International Schools relationship with Harrow School, from a Harrow School perspective, it is, number one, Harrow School is very proud of its international schools and the quality it represents for Harrow education in Asia. But number two, it generates through the license a bit of income, a bit of extra income for Harrow School, and it spends that income on scholarships. That's what all the income goes to. So it's something that's very deep in us.
Mick, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the China Jeducation podcast today. It really has. I've learned so much, and I think a lot of our listeners are going to as well. And I really hope that, you know, we can continue this story, because the rollout is just incredible. You know, we wish you the hugest amount of success with it.
Well, you're also doing a great job, Chris. I've enjoyed the way you've conducted this conversation. It's been very broad-reaching. You've done your research extremely well, and it's been a pleasure to talk to you. And if I can help in the future in any way, please just get in touch. Bye-bye to your listeners. I hope they found it useful, and I hope I'll be hearing from some of you.
Yeah, wonderful. And Nick, we always ask this. You can make this short if you want, because I know we're coming up to lunchtime now. Always ask the people we have on, what's your most powerful teacher's tip? And I'm sure you have literally so many. But if we're talking about Harrow and in an international setting, to those teachers out there, what would it be in a nutshell?
Some of you will think that this is cliched. My most powerful teacher's tip, and it immediately sprung into my mind as you were asking the question, is to make sure that your children know you love them. To be in it for the kids for the right reasons, and for them to know it. Whether you're a class teacher, a specialist teacher, a middle manager, a headmaster, if your kids know that you're in it for them, they'll walk through fire for you. That's my teacher's tip.
Hear, hear. Listeners, if you would like to find out more information about Harrow's quite incredible international expansion, potential job vacancies, and the great work that Mick and his team are doing, please go to www.ilachina.cn. That's ilachina.cn. Once again, Mick, thank you so much. You have a great day, and look forward to speaking to you at some point in the future. This is China Jedi, people. If you enjoy listening to the China Jedi podcast and want to get involved, either by asking a question, expressing your opinion, good or bad, light or dark, or even appearing as a special guest, then get in touch by emailing our team at info@chinajedi.com. That's info@chinajedi.com. May the smile be with you.